Hi, LinkedIn. Hello, YouTube. My name is Dr. Eliana Ramirez. I am jumping in here quickly just to share with you an exciting new group that I'm starting up. This is for DEI Backlash Survivors. So for folks who have been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work, who were either fired or forced to flee a job for protection of their safety, their sanity, their health, this is a group for you. We are meeting every Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific. That would be 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. This is a 2-hour group. This is not therapy and it's not legal advice. It is specifically professional coaching. So many of us who have experienced DEI backlash gave our everything to the job. We worked extremely long hours. We were exposed to significant amount of racial trauma. If we were part of the LGBTQIA2S community, we oftentimes were exposed to significant anti-LGBT bias. If we were living with disabilities, we are oftentimes exposed to quite a bit of ableism. When we do diversity, equity, and inclusion work in a way that actually challenges the status quo, that literally increases the recruitment, retention, hiring, and promotion of historically underrepresented and underestimated populations of workers, we end up experiencing concentrated levels of stigma and bias and discrimination in the workplace. And with recent political shifts, many of us were forced out of these positions. And that has left a significant amount of workplace trauma and stress. And that trauma and stress can impact us as we move into new jobs. And so this DEI Backlash Survivors group was created in a trauma-informed and healing-centered manner, which means that we are using the neuroscience of trauma to understand how the chronic stress in these positions, the institutional betrayal and backlash that we experienced, impacts our mental health, our physical health, and even the very structure of our brain. We're seeing these injuries as systemic. This is what happens to us when the systems around us fail us and when they betray us. The good news is that as human beings, we were literally designed, both our brains and our bodies were designed to heal from injuries. And there's quite a bit that we can do from a self-help perspective if we have the right access to information and resources to help us move forward. And part of what can be especially helpful is to process our experiences, the impact on our professional lives in a group with other people who have that shared experience. Because as we start to talk to one another, we realize that the same tactics of workplace bullying, mobbing, retaliation against our efforts are consistent across industries, across job positions. And when we start to recognize common patterns in the ways that the same company or institution that hired us to do DEI work then actually fires us or forces us out through sabotage, when we actually challenge the status quo, then we can start to see that it wasn't us. This was institutional betrayal and backlash. And this is what happens when we are working in systems that are inauthentic allies or have performative allyship. So moving right along in these slides, just again, this is a group that's on Wednesdays. I have created this in a way that's now a drop-in group. So that way, if you want to check out one session, you're more than welcome to without having to make a long-term commitment to the group. It's a 2-hour group. The first 40 minutes are a didactic presentation where I will be sharing research literature about information like institutional betrayal so that you can understand not only what might have happened to you, but how to recognize the warning signs in future positions. If you are going into interviews that are saying that they want you to work on diversity, equity, inclusion, how you can tell early on whether or not they're actually going to back up your work when everything kind of hits the fan, frankly, when there starts to be pushback at a ground level in the organization, company, or institution where you work. I will also be sharing information about the neuroscience of trauma and how our actual brain function changes when we are under chronic stress, as well as somatic practices that we can do on our own to help settle the nervous system and interrupt the stress hormone flooding that's common when we experience workplace trauma. We're going to do some somatic skill building. So you'll have these skills with you everywhere you go in the future. We'll take a break, and then we're going to go into small groups, and we'll have discussions that are facilitated by DEI leaders who understand what the backlash experience is. And we will then come back into the main room. We'll do a report out and a 5-minute closing exercise, including a survey, so that you will have an opportunity to provide feedback after every session. This is a cohort that is created based off of positive psychology, the idea that there's always room for improvement, and that together as a community, we will be determining what is helpful for us in this environment. So just briefly, I'm going to share with you some of the topics that we'll be discussing in this group. So we're going to start off talking about what led us into the DEI world, where we are now, and what we dream of happening next in our future. In particular, we're going to be talking about what in the world has happened to our lives, because so many of us put everything we had, all of our energy, all of our hope, all of our fortitude into these positions because we significantly are committed to our communities. This is not theoretical for us. For many of us, it's quite personal. We might have come from families or communities that have been historically marginalized and kept from these workspaces. And so for us getting into these workspaces, we were committed to ensuring that others could come with us into these workspaces. And so it can create a significant ambiguous loss and tremendous emotional difficulty when the rug is essentially pulled out from under us, when we are forced out of these jobs. And so we really want to kind of talk about where this has left us and what our goals are professionally in the future. We're going to, in week 2, start talking about interoception. That is the awareness of what is happening inside of our bodies that are warning signs that our stress in the workplace is starting to move into trauma, and how we can help ourselves to manage those kinds of work stressors and or recognize earlier on if those work stressors are going to end up causing us physical or psychological harm, so that we can remove ourselves from those environments prior to accumulating injuries that would last a lifetime, essentially, in some cases. The third week, we're going to talk about restorative moments within toxic jobs. So what types of resources are available to us if we are currently in a toxic job, or if we're currently experiencing workplace abuse that's related to our DEI work, what we can do to help ourselves get through those work environments until we can get into a safer environment. We're going to then move into, in future weeks, talking about the neuroscience of racial stress, and in particular, talking about dynamics like race lighting, that is racialized gaslighting. These are psychological manipulation tactics that are used to confuse us and to disorient us and to make us think that we can no longer actually believe in our memories or in our ability to understand what is happening around us. It's a very common tactic that's used in workplaces and unfortunately in toxic families and other systems like education and healthcare, when a person is bringing up a topic that threatens the status quo. So we'll be talking about the impact of these kinds of chronic racial stressors as they affect our physical health and our mental health, and in particular, the concept of weathering. This is the way in which chronic exposure to stress hormone flooding results in metabolic illnesses, which are the precursors to things like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, obesity. So essentially, thinking about how our health over the long term can be impacted in an abusive work environment, and what we can do moving into the next week, embodied racial stress recovery. So how we can use our nervous systems, how we can use our endocrine system, our hormones, to help reduce the inflammation in our bodies to start to move towards repair and recovery. We'll also be talking about the tools of institutional betrayal and other DEI backlash, so that whenever you enter into a new position, you can recognize earlier on when a system is starting to move into a mobbing scenario, when microaggressions, macroaggressions, and mesoaggressions are happening. Because oftentimes in these environments, people are not outright telling us what they're doing. Of course, they are trying to manipulate us in the process. And it can be really helpful to understand some of the common dynamics that are used by a system to prevent change from the status quo. So this would be things like DARVO, the Defend, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender that Dr. Jennifer Freyd created out of University of Oregon. Moving on further, we'll also be talking about hostile workplace self-defense. That is how you can strategically engage in human resources, what you can do to leverage your employee rights at a state level, and then how you can use the employee handbook as well to help yourself stay as safe as possible. We'll be talking about in the following weeks that it really is a personal decision whether or not somebody stays in an environment that is dangerous for them in a workplace. You know, we all go to work to earn money, not to be abused. And yet so many of us experience psychological abuse in workplaces. We're going to talk about when you get to the point where if you decide that you want to leave in an environment, how to exit plan so that you have the most resources available to you and you are positioned in the strongest way to advocate for yourself. And then finally, bringing it all together, how we can rejoin ourselves, different aspects of us that we've had to compartmentalize to survive in predominantly white institutions, predominantly heterosexual and cisgender institutions. And importantly, we will be witnessing one another as we kind of process what our own experiences were like with DEI backlash, in part because these are social wounds that have happened, social injuries that we have sustained as we were experiencing DEI backlash in the workplace. And so having the witness of other people who are also DEI leaders who experience backlash can be extremely helpful. So these sessions are every week on Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. And in between sessions, if you're interested, I will provide resources that you can do further self-help work on your own. I've created several resource guides and other activities through software like Padlet that can help you to explore your own experience of DEI backlash and, importantly, professional post-traumatic growth. So this is for people who've experienced mobbing, sabotage, termination, or constructive discharge. That is, their work was made so profoundly uncomfortable and they were sabotaged to the extent that they had to leave the job, again, either to protect their health and their wellness, or frankly, their professional trajectory. This is specifically for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who are agreeing to avoid discriminatory language and behaviors. This is a non-competitive environment. This is an environment for us to really show up and be supportive to one another, because goodness knows, we know there is too much negativity that's coming at us already. And this is an environment where we will not be giving unrequested and unwelcome advice to one another. We will only provide feedback if it is solicited from other group members. In particular, I'm hoping that we will have large groups of people who are part of the LGBTQIA2S community, people who are living with neurodiversity, people who are immigrants, people who are Muslim or other non-Christian backgrounds. Certainly people who are Christian are welcome as well. I just want to make sure that everyone, regardless of your faith, knows that you are welcome to attend, and really especially encourage older adults to attend, and people who are living with both visible and invisible disabilities. Too often when a workplace mobbing occurs, people who have multiple intersecting identities are the first to be on the chopping block. And so it's just really important for me to make sure that folks know that you're welcome here in this group if you have multiple intersecting identities. If you would like to register for this drop-in group, there is a code, a QR code that you're welcome to take a picture of and sign up for. It is a $50 for a 2-hour session, so it's $25 an hour. And if you would like to sign up for the entire cohort, there are multiple opportunities to reduce the total cost of the cohort if you were to bring in other people to register as well. So I just want to take a moment to show you a couple of additional things. So I will be sharing multiple resources throughout the cohort process. There will be these resources. For example, I've created this slide deck that are resources following layoff. So we know from research that there are significant impacts to our physical health and our mental health from layoff and unemployment. And it's really important for me that as a person who is focused on the workforce wellness, and especially from underrepresented and underestimated workers, that I share resources that do not involve police, mental health crisis resources that maximize your autonomy and your ability to survive crises on your own, in your home, in your community. I've also put together a number of resources should you need unemployment resources. There's a helpline. There are numerous other legal resources that are shared in this guide. And then a series of best practices that people can engage in following a layoff. So if you have been laid off, but you still have email access, there are some tips on what you should send to yourself quickly before you lose your email access. Then the first steps following layoff. These slides I've put together after having reviewed numerous articles about layoff and summarizing this information, because so many of us, once we are laid off from an environment that is toxic or overwhelming or psychologically abusive, by the time that we leave, our brains are essentially guacamole, right? It is hard to read information. It's hard to remember things. It can be hard to focus. And so I have done a lot of that heavy lifting for you. And then professional next steps, what you can do to help yourself, again, moving into that professional post-traumatic growth. So these are the types of resources that I'll be sharing in this group. I am a licensed clinical social worker by profession, and I'm a researcher of racial and LGBTQ related workplace trauma. This group is group coaching. So it is not therapy, and I will not be giving legal advice, but I will be providing numerous resources so that you can hopefully support yourself towards your own post-traumatic growth in terms of your profession. There will be many resources. If you want a therapist, I can provide you numerous resources like this resource guide. It has several different places where you can find a therapist. If you're looking for legal advice, I will provide you with contact information for both free legal services and how to find an attorney if you'd like an attorney. Again, this is a group coaching cohort that is specifically set up to help you figure out how to help yourself. And it is not therapy, but there'll be great information like how to apply for unemployment benefits, if that's something that would be of use to you. And then a number of different websites from incredible content creators on LinkedIn and in other places where folks have really put together information that can be helpful if you're in the early stages of layoff, or even if you've been laid off for a while and you're looking for a job. So I just want to give huge shout out to people like Dr. Carrie Yazid, who wrote Unbreak My Soul, How Black Women Can Begin to Heal Workplace Racial Trauma. Dr. Yazid has a phenomenal Substack and YouTube channel, and she has amazing videos and articles such as this one, Fired at 55, How I Earned Income in the First 30 Days. There's also this amazing remote job board by Joe Cardillo. They have put together so much information, 60 to 80 different job opportunities per month. Then there's also Black Remote She Job Board. Just incredible resources that are available that I have been collecting, and I'm delighted to share with you all, because it can be so overwhelming immediately after this kind of a workplace trauma. So again, I hope that you will consider reaching out. If you are interested in joining us, just know that you are not alone. Whatever has happened to you most likely was not your fault. We are in an environment, in a time when we who are in the worlds of diversity, equity, inclusion have been scapegoated. We are being accused of doing all sorts of outrageous things, like causing airplane crashes and things that we know are not true. And we really need one another right now. So that's why I've created this group. I hope that you will consider joining us. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And thank you all so much. Dr. Hendricks, I'm so excited that you're here. And to everyone who might have logged in now or in the future, thank you so much for joining. And thank you for your work, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those of us who have been doing the work for years know how important it is when it's done in a strategic manner, which means that we hopefully were successful, but also it means that we probably experienced an inordinate amount of stress and backlash. So thank you all so very much. I hope to be in community with you soon.